When Sira refused to kneel and wash her mother-in-law's feet, Bayo didn't just shout. He slapped her, right in front of the family. Everyone gasped, but what they didn't know was Sira already knew his biggest secret, and the day he raised his hand was the day she decided the next hand raised would be the truth. Sira was a simple, kind-hearted girl who believed deeply in love. When Bayo asked her to marry him, she didn't think twice. She left everything behind, her comfortable home, her stable job, her peaceful life, just to be with him. She believed that as long as two people loved each other, everything else would work out. She trusted Bayo. She thought he would protect her, support her, and stand by her side no matter what. But she was wrong. From the moment she entered Bayo's family house, everything changed. His mother looked at her with cold eyes, like Sira was just a stranger who had come to take over her son. There was no warm welcome, no kindness, only silent judgment. Sira tried to smile, to greet her gently, but it didn't matter. To Bayo's mother, Sira was not a wife. She was a maid, a tool, a servant wearing a wedding ring. In just her first week in the house, the humiliation started. One evening, while everyone sat in the living room, Bayo's mother suddenly called Sira and handed her a small bowl. Inside, it was pepper balm. She pointed to her feet and said, "Massage them." Sira was shocked. Her hands shook, but she obeyed. She knelt on the floor, opened the balm, and began to rub it into her mother-in-law's feet. The burning smell stung her nose. Her heart ached. She kept looking up, hoping Bayo would say something, anything, but he just sat there, silent, watching. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He didn't care. That night, Sira couldn't sleep, not because of the pain in her knees or the smell of the pepper balm still stuck to her fingers, but because she finally saw the truth. Bayo wasn't going to protect her. He wasn't going to stop his mother. He had brought her into that house, not as a partner, but as someone to suffer and stay quiet. Still, Sira told herself to be patient. Maybe things would get better. Maybe this was just a test. Maybe, if she stayed kind and respectful, his mother would accept her. Maybe Bayo would change. But deep down, something inside her was already breaking. A small voice in her heart whispered, "Love is not supposed to hurt like this." And yet, she stayed, because she still believed that love was enough. But soon, she would find out just how wrong she was. Every single day in that house felt like a new punishment for Sira. From the moment she woke up, her suffering began. She had to cook with an old, broken stove that barely worked. Sometimes, the fire would go out in the middle of cooking, and she'd have to start all over again, sweating and tired. No one helped her. No one cared. Bayo's mother would just sit and watch, ready to complain that the food was either too salty or not hot enough. After cooking, she had to clean the whole compound by herself. She swept the yard, washed clothes, scrubbed the floors, even cleaned the toilets, while everyone else sat inside and relaxed. It didn't matter if she was sick or in pain. The moment she slowed down, insults came flying. "You're lazy. You want to enjoy marriage without working." Even when she tried her best, it was never enough. But the worst part, she wasn't even allowed to eat if she didn't kneel properly to greet her mother-in-law. One day, after cleaning the whole compound, she went to greet her. She was tired, her knees weak, and she didn't kneel all the way down. Her mother-in-law looked at her coldly and said, "No food for you today." Sira went to bed hungry that night, her stomach empty, but her heart even emptier. Still, Sira said nothing. Not because she was afraid, but because she kept hoping Bayo would notice. That one day, he'd say, "Enough, leave my wife alone." But Bayo didn't defend her. He didn't comfort her. In fact, he joined them. He started acting like she deserved the suffering. When his mother insulted Sira, he laughed. When she cried, he ignored her. The man she gave up everything for chose silence. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late. Sira had just finished cleaning the dishes. Her back ached. Her eyes were heavy. She was about to rest when Bayo's mother called her again. She wanted her to sweep the living room, again, even though it was already clean. Sira quietly said, "Please, I'm tired." That small sentence was all it took. Bayo stood up and walked straight to her, and then he slapped her right across the face. The sound was loud. The room went silent. Sira held her cheek, not because of the pain, but because of the shock. He had hit her, for saying no, for refusing to obey a cruel demand, for being tired. She looked at him, her eyes full of quiet strength. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. But something inside her snapped. That slap wasn't just pain, it was a message. And Sira heard it clearly. This was no longer love, it was war. After Bayo slapped her, the room went quiet. The only sound was the loud echo of the slap still hanging in the air. Sira didn't cry, she didn't yell, she didn't fall to the ground or beg. Instead, she stood very still and looked him straight in the eye. Her face was calm, but her eyes were burning. She didn't need to shout to shake him. She just leaned in slightly and whispered, "You touched me for her. Now wait till she sees who's touching you." In that moment, Bayo's face changed. His chest stopped rising. His smile faded. His hands slowly dropped to his side. That one sentence from Sira hit him harder than any slap, because deep inside, he knew exactly what she meant. He knew he had been doing wrong behind her back. He knew he had secrets. And now he realized Sira knew them too. You see, Sira wasn't just the soft-spoken wife they all thought they could push around. Behind her quietness, she'd been watching, listening, noticing things. Late-night calls Bayo made in the bathroom, strange perfume on his shirts, hidden receipts in his pocket, smiles he gave to his phone when he thought no one was looking. He thought she was too busy washing pots and sweeping floors to notice. But Sira noticed everything, and she did more than just notice. She had proof. Sira had bought a small camera, one of those tiny ones no one could easily see. She placed it carefully in their bedroom, hidden inside a flower vase. She also had a voice recorder tucked under the couch, recording the late-night conversations Bayo had with his friend. Every sweet word he whispered to another woman, every promise he made. Sira had it all saved. She had waited for the right time, waited for the day Bayo would cross the final line. And now, he had done it. He had raised his hand, not in love, but in shame, not to protect, but to destroy. And with that one slap, he gave Sira the permission she needed to act, the permission to speak, to show everyone who he really was. Bayo didn't say a word after Sira whispered to him. He just stood there, pale and still, because he didn't know how much she had seen, how much she had recorded, and most of all, when she would strike. Sira, still holding her cheek, turned around quietly and walked away. But in her mind, the plan had already begun. She was done being silent, and soon the whole world would hear her voice. Weeks before that terrible slap, Sira had already started noticing strange things. Things that didn't feel right. Bayo, who used to come home early and talk with her, now stayed out late. He would whisper on the phone in the bathroom, and when she walked in, he would quickly end the call. He said it was work, but Sira could feel the lie in his voice. She wasn't stupid. She noticed everything. The missed calls from unknown names, the sudden meetings on weekends, the different smell on his shirt, and once, a red lipstick stain on his white collar. Sira didn't even wear lipstick. Her heart told her something was wrong. So one day, she decided to follow him. She didn't tell anyone. She waited until he said he had a business dinner. Then quietly, she dressed in black, took a cab, and followed his car from a distance. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was strong. She needed to know the truth, and what she saw broke her completely. There he was, her husband, sitting in a cozy restaurant, laughing and smiling with another woman. A woman wearing heavy makeup, expensive clothes, and holding his hand like she owned him. Sira stayed hidden behind a pillar. Tears ran down her face as she listened to him talk. But what crushed her soul wasn't just that he was cheating. It was what he was saying. "I'll get the money soon," Bayo said. "Once Sira gives me access to her savings, we can start our new life. I promise you, babe." Sira's mouth dropped open. Her savings, the money she had worked so hard to build, the money she had kept for emergencies, for a better future. Bayo was planning to use that money to build a life with another woman, a woman who laughed at Sira's pain without even knowing her name. Sira pulled out her phone and quietly recorded everything. She didn't make a sound. She didn't confront them. She just recorded every word, every lie, every fake promise he made. And when she got home, she backed up the video and saved it in her email and on a flash drive. She kept one in her purse at all times. From that day, Sira stopped seeing Bayo as her husband. She saw him as a stranger, a dangerous stranger living in her home. She smiled during the day. She cooked and cleaned. But at night, she cried quietly, not because she was weak, but because she knew a storm was coming, and she needed to be ready. The proof was already in her pocket. She just needed the right moment to use it. The day had finally come. Bayo's family had organized a big celebration at their compound. They invited everyone, neighbors, elders, friends, and even some church members. The compound was decorated with ribbons and balloons, music played, and the smell of food filled the air. People laughed and danced, and everyone was in a joyful mood. They said the celebration was for Bayo's beautiful marriage, to show the whole community how happy and successful his home was. Sira didn't dress in anything fancy. She wore a simple gown and tied her hair neatly. She helped in the kitchen, served food to guests with a gentle smile, and moved around quietly. No one could guess what was in her mind. She looked like the perfect wife, humble, respectful, and calm. But deep inside, she was waiting. She had planned everything, and now the moment was near. The event continued. People gave speeches. Elders blessed the couple. Bayo's mother smiled proudly as people praised her son. Then Bayo stood up, holding a microphone. He cleared his throat and began to speak. "I just want to thank everyone here," he said, smiling wide, "for supporting me and my wife in this perfect marriage. We are grateful for the love and respect you've all shown us." People clapped. Some women even shouted, "God bless your home." That was when Sira stood up and walked to his side. The clapping slowed down as people watched her. Some smiled, thinking she was going to say something sweet. But Sira didn't hold a microphone. She reached into her small handbag and pulled out something small but powerful, a Bluetooth speaker. The moment the speaker came on, silence took over. Then a voice began to play, Bayo's voice. "I'll get the money soon," it said. "Once Sira gives me access to her savings, we can start our new life. I promise you, babe." Gasps filled the air. Some people covered their mouths. Others looked at each other in shock. Sira didn't move. She let the recording play fully. Every word, every lie, the whole secret conversation Bayo had with the other woman. Bayo's face turned pale. His smile vanished. He tried to grab the speaker, but it was too late. The damage was done. Sira turned to the crowd and said softly, "This is the perfect marriage you're celebrating." She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just walked away, leaving everyone speechless, especially Bayo. People who had once looked down on her now looked at her with respect. She had exposed the truth in the most powerful way. That day wasn't just a celebration. It became a day the entire community would never forget. The day the silent wife showed her strength. The whole compound went quiet. The screen that was set up for family memories suddenly lit up with something no one expected. At first, people thought it was another speech or photo slideshow, but as the video started playing, all eyes widened in shock. It was Bayo, on the screen, shirtless, sitting on a bed with another woman. They were laughing, holding each other, looking like a couple deeply in love. But it didn't stop there. The woman asked him, "What about your wife?" And Bayo laughed loudly, shook his head and said, "Sira? She's just a background character in my story. A tool. She doesn't matter." That was it. The crowd gasped so loudly it echoed. Some people dropped their plates. Drinks spilled. A baby started crying. Women covered their mouths. Elders looked at each other in disbelief. One auntie shouted, "Ewu! What did I just hear?" Bayo's mother, who had been standing proudly a few minutes ago, suddenly held her chest and fainted on the spot. Some women rushed to her, shouting for water. The celebration had turned into pure chaos. Bayo stood there, frozen like a statue. His face turned red, then white. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His hands shook. The people who had just praised him now looked at him with disgust. Whispers flew around the crowd. So this is the real him. What a disgrace. After everything Sira did for him. But in the middle of all the noise, only one person stood still. Sira. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just stood there calmly, like a queen in her palace, watching everything unfold. Her face was calm, her back straight, and her eyes full of power. She didn't need to explain anything. The video had said it all. People turned to look at her with a new kind of respect. The same people who used to say she was too quiet, too soft, too weak. Now they saw her strength. She didn't fight with her hands. She fought with truth. Bayo tried to walk toward her, stuttering. "Sira, it's not what it looks like." But she raised one finger, and he stopped. No words were needed. Everyone saw what he truly was. A liar, a cheat, a man who used love as a game. Sira slowly turned and walked away. She didn't rush. She didn't look back. Her silence was louder than any speech. And the whole compound watched her leave, stunned. That moment changed everything. For Bayo, it was the end of his fake image. For Sierra, it was the beginning of her freedom. And for the people watching, it was a lesson they would never forget. Never underestimate a woman who is silent because she might be gathering her power. As soon as the video ended, chaos exploded in the compound. People started talking over each other, whispering, shouting, trying to make sense of what they had just seen. Bayo's relatives, especially his aunties and uncles, quickly rushed to his side. One uncle shouted, "This is not him! Someone has used jazz!" Another aunt wailed, "This is the hand of the devil! Witches have entered our family!" They tried to cover the shame with excuses. They said maybe Sierra used black magic. Some even tried to blame her for setting Bayo up. One woman screamed, "How can you embarrass your husband like this in front of the whole village?" Another added, "A good wife covers her man's shame." But Sierra didn't argue. She didn't shout back. She just picked up the microphone, the same mic Bayo had used to thank people for their support. Her hand was steady, her voice calm but powerful. She looked around, straight into the eyes of the crowd, and said, "He taught me shame. I served him loyalty. He gave me bruises. I gave him a mirror." The crowd fell silent again. Those words hit like thunder, short, strong, honest. No shouting, no crying, just the plain truth. And with that, Sierra dropped the mic, not with anger, but with quiet confidence. Then she turned around and walked away. No one tried to stop her, not even Bayo, not even his loudest aunt. Everyone just watched. She didn't rush. Her steps were slow, steady, full of dignity. She wasn't the same woman who had come into that house full of hope and love. She was now stronger, wiser, and fearless. The girl who once massaged her mother-in-law's feet was gone. This was a woman who had survived fire and walked out shining. As she walked past the guests, some moved out of her way like she was royalty. Some even nodded in respect. Others looked down, ashamed for how they had once judged her or stayed silent while she suffered. Behind her, Bayo stood like a man who had lost everything. His family tried to gather around him, but the truth had already burned his mask. There was no hiding now. Everyone had seen who he truly was. Sierra didn't look back. She didn't need their apology. She didn't need their tears. She had already forgiven herself for staying too long, for loving too hard. And now she was choosing herself. It was not just a walk out of a party. It was a walk into a new life. And everyone there knew, from that day on, Sierra's name would be remembered, not as the wife who was cheated on, but as the woman who stood in truth, exposed lies, and walked away with her head held high. After everything, Sierra didn't go into hiding. She didn't disappear or cry behind closed doors. Number. She wiped her tears, stood in front of her small mirror, looked at herself and said, "It's time to speak." That same week, she opened a simple vlog on her phone. She called it Sierra Speaks. Her first video was just her, sitting on a plastic chair, wearing her normal clothes. No makeup, no fancy background, just truth. She said, "My name is Sierra. I gave everything to love, and it almost destroyed me, but I'm still standing." The video spread like fire. People shared it everywhere. Women in villages, towns, even in other countries started sending messages. Some cried as they told her, "Your story is my story." Others said, "You gave me strength to walk away too." Sierra didn't expect the love, but it poured in. Messages, gifts, support. She was no longer just a quiet wife. She had become a voice for so many who felt voiceless. She kept going. Every week, she posted new videos about healing, about self-worth, about how to rebuild after betrayal. She didn't pretend to be perfect. She shared her pain, her lessons, her small victories. People connected with her honesty. Soon, companies began reaching out. Women's groups invited her to speak. She started getting paid to tell her truth. Meanwhile, Bayo's life took a sharp turn. After the scandal, the video from the party went viral too. His company didn't want to be linked to the shame, so they fired him. Friends stopped answering his calls. His neighbors stopped greeting him. The same people who once praised him now avoided him. And the mistress, the one he had promised a future, she disappeared the moment the money dried up. She left him with nothing, no love, no support, not even a goodbye. Bayo sat alone in the same house where Sierra once served his family like a maid, but now it was empty. No one cooked, no one cleaned, no one massaged his mother's feet. Even his mother stopped talking much, ashamed of how they treated Sierra. But Sira, she had changed. She moved to a new apartment. Bright, peaceful, her own space. She smiled more, laughed louder, danced to music while cooking her favorite meals. She even went back to school online, learning things she always put on hold. And every time someone asked, "How did you rise again?" she simply said, "Because I refused to stay broken." Sira didn't just survive. She became a symbol of strength. People who once pitied her now admired her. She had lost a man, yes, but she found herself, and that was the greatest victory of all. One quiet afternoon, as the sun was going down, Sira heard a knock at her gate. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, a young boy stood there, holding an envelope. "A man gave me this. He said it's for you," the boy said. Sira collected it, thanked him, and went back inside. She looked at the envelope. Her name was written in Bayo's handwriting, shaky, as if he had cried while writing it. For a moment, her hand froze. Old memories flashed in her mind, the slap, the insults, the betrayal, but she didn't feel pain anymore. She felt peace. Still, she sat down and opened the letter. It was full of words, long, sad words. Bayo wrote about how sorry he was. He said he hadn't slept well since the day she left, that he missed her voice, her smile, her food, that he now understood what he had lost. He wrote about the night she exposed him. He said he had nightmares about it. He begged for forgiveness. He wrote that he was a changed man, that he wanted one more chance. Sira finished reading the letter, and for a moment she was quiet, not angry, not sad, just calm. She folded the letter slowly, walked to the backyard where she kept a small metal bowl and lit a match. The fire burned gently. She tore the letter in half, then again, and again. She dropped the pieces into the fire and watched them turn black, then grey, then disappear. As the flames danced, she whispered to herself, "Some things are better in ash than in albums. This letter isn't a memory I want to keep. It's a warning I'll never forget." She stood up, dusted her hands, and walked back inside. That night, Sira cooked her favorite meal. She played music. She danced alone in her kitchen, smiling like someone who had finally removed the last thorn from her heart. The letter didn't break her. It reminded her how far she had come. She no longer needed apologies. She no longer needed closure. Her peace was not tied to his regret. Bayo's words were late, like expired medicine, useless and forgotten. And as the wind carried the ashes away, Sira felt lighter, freer, stronger. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Sometimes it means letting go completely so you can grow, shine, and never look back. Years had passed. Sira was no longer just the woman who had been hurt. She had become the woman who healed, rose, and inspired millions. Her name was known across countries, shared in schools, women's groups, and even government halls. And now she stood on a grand stage, lights shining on her, cameras rolling, and thousands of people watching in silence. She wore a simple dress, her natural hair tied back, her eyes calm but filled with fire. She wasn't nervous. This was her truth, and she had told it so many times that it had become a part of her power. She began to speak. Her voice was steady, her words simple but deep. She talked about how love made her blind, how tradition tied her hands, and how silence almost killed her spirit. She told them how she thought being a good wife meant enduring pain quietly. She shared the moment everything changed, the slap, the betrayal, and the hidden camera that opened the world's eyes. The hall was silent. No one moved. Even the camera crew had stopped adjusting their equipment. Everyone listened. Then came the question that always came. "Sira, how did you find the strength to speak out when many women stay silent?" She smiled softly, and without hesitation she said, "The day he slapped me, he didn't break me. He gave me permission to fight back, not with anger, but with truth. And once I spoke my truth, I found my voice. And once I found my voice, I knew I would never be quiet again." Applause filled the room. Not the polite kind, real emotional claps with cheers and even tears. People stood up. Some hugged each other. Some wiped their eyes. In that moment, Sira was not just one woman. She was the voice of many. Women who had suffered in silence. Women who had been called weak for staying. And women who had been judged for leaving. Her story was more than a story. It was a mirror, a lesson, and a light. That night, her words trended across social media. Her clips were shared by celebrities, activists, mothers, and even young girls. Sira became a symbol, not just of survival, but of transformation. And though Bayo's name faded into the background, Sira's name only grew brighter, because she did not let pain define her. she turned it into power, and the world never forgot her story.